Our focus today is on digitization in agriculture, and my name is Nekesa Wafula. I'll be your moderator for today. The masterclass is hosted by the Society of Crop Agribusiness Advisors of Kenya, a professional network that is a membership-based society registered in December 2015. And our membership is drawn from various agricultural bodies, including producers and exporters, inputs and service providers and consultants, among others. Members participate in life of society through organized events and general meetings and contribute to the external engagement through working groups, which shape and drive the thematic development of SOCA's vision and mission. And we encourage you to also join in if you're in the agricultural sector, so that we can grow and and be part of the contribution that we make towards the growth of the agricultural sector. Today, we are discovering the power of digitization in agriculture and unlocking the potential of technology and sustainable farming practices. Digital agriculture is the application of big data and precision technologies system in agriculture. That's from Rhodes et al. 2019. It comprises of a range of practices which collectively facilitates transformation in agri-food systems that really make a profound impact in terms of production. We will be hosting Mr. Jan Willem from EPROD. EPROD offers an ERP for agricultural supply chain. They will share their journey in digitization of agricultural supply chain and their challenges, and what opportunities they see in the future for those operating in this space. For our audience, please feel free to introduce yourself in the chat box and type in your questions as the presentation proceeds. You can follow us on YouTube and Facebook channels at the Society of Crop Agribusiness Advisors of Kenya, and our Twitter page that is at SOCA Kenya. And also kindly note that the views presented during the masterclass are personal and do not necessarily represent the views of SOCA and the organizations represented here. We now welcome Mr. Jan Willem van Kasteren. He is a trained agricultural economist from Wageningen University in the Netherlands. He's an agricultural value chain analyst and market systems development specialist with over 26 years experience in several continents. He has been an entrepreneur in Kenya since 2004 and is the co-founder of Equator Kenya Limited, a company with over 8,000 contracted farmers at the coast of Kenya to produce Africa bird's eye chilies. He's also the co-founder of eProd Solutions, a Kenya agtech and fintech company, offering a supply chain management platform in 20 developing countries. And it has been used in more than 30 different agricultural sectors. So welcome, Jan, and feel free to share your screen.
Great, thank you. Thank you very much. Let me share my screen, Teresa. So, good. Good evening, good afternoon for those in Western Africa. My name is Jan Willem van Kasteren. I'm the co-founder of eProd Solutions, and I've been in Kenya, in Africa, for the last 20 years. I started my career in research and worked later in development, but in 2004 I started my own company exporting chili peppers by contracting farmers in Kenya. And in this way I learned a lot about contract farming, and I've worked since then as an exporter, as a food processor, but also as a consultant to governments or to NGOs or to the private sector in a number of African countries. So the software that we developed for our company in 2004 became quite a big platform, and we commercialized that in 2016. So that is the platform that is now used in 20 countries, and therefore also as a member of SOCA, I'm very happy that we have been invited to introduce basically some elements of digitalization. We work in 20 countries, we work in more than 30 different sectors, and many of our clients often work for the first time with digital tools. Some of them have never even used computers, and there are many elements here that can be quite confusing. Everybody talks about big data, data lakes, data analytics, artificial intelligence, machine learning. So let me try to help to make this a little bit concrete by giving you some examples of digital tools. Of course, the examples will be around the product eProd, but I will try to make this as general as possible. So eProd offers a supply chain management platform for those who are buying from the farmers. So that could be farmer cooperatives, commodity traders, food processors. Of course, in Africa, like in many sectors in many countries, but especially in Africa, my experience is that entrepreneurs, like many of you, work with a lot of market uncertainty, and you deal with very small margins. So the reality is that digital tools have to be very affordable. So to make sure that you can always, every season, continue paying for the maintenance fees or the license fees, whatever model you choose, whether it is a SaaS, software as a service, or platform as a service, or simply an annual license fee, like in the case of eProd, there are recurring costs that you need to make sure that you can maintain those. Otherwise, there is no point in developing or introducing digital tools into your organization. And we see often that NGOs play an important role to introduce software. They are not always, as let's say, cost conscious, or they might not always understand the reality of you as an entrepreneur on the ground, and might introduce systems that are actually far too expensive, and it's not realistic that you will maintain these systems after the project with the NGO has stopped. So it's very important to look into the cost elements. So of course, internet speed, or the presence of internet or absence of internet, is a big issue. You should select a system that can work offline, or if the internet is very slow, a system that can, for example, synchronize in a 2G network. And so we have adjusted eProd that it can even work in a 2G network. That is quite a challenge, because many of the applications are designed looking mainly at functionalities, but not looking at the reality on the ground. So applications that could work in Europe or some places in Asia or Northern America, where you have even 5G network, they might be too heavy to run them here under the local circumstances, especially if you leave the capital cities. Then, of course, everybody's talking about data. There is value in data. We can talk about that. There is data privacy. There is data quality. Many aspects related to the data. So let's get started. Maybe a little bit of background. I mentioned already, we started in 2004 as an exporter of chili peppers. We had about 8,000 farmers under contract. I actually managed to sell the company because I really wanted to focus on the software. So 2 years ago, we sold the company. In the meantime, I think they have like 12,000 farmers under contract at the coastal strip of Kenya. The name of the company is Equator Kenya. Some of you might know it. So we have really started in 2015-16 with a couple of pilots. You can imagine we developed a platform for ourselves. So when we started, we didn't even have a name for the platform. We had no training manuals. We had never had a need for that. So when we commercialized the platform, we needed to make a lot of adjustments to make sure that it could be used off the shelf, which basically means that when we get a new client, we don't need to make adjustments to the system. We can configure it. So whether you do export avocados, or you do produce dairy milk for the local cooperative, or you do coffee for the export market, it doesn't matter. The system can be just set up in a couple of hours, basically, to meet your needs. So that is a real important aspect. Many systems would take days, if not weeks or longer, to just basically design. Then they have to be built. So this becomes very expensive and also quite risky, because it is not always certain that that the developers will get it right. And then, of course, by then you have put in already so much money that you become dependent. You cannot pull out anymore, and you can really get stuck with the digital tools. So a little bit more information about us. We are in more than 20 countries. Actually, we are in 20 countries in Africa. We just added Guinea, Guinea-Bissau, Liberia, Gambia. We also do many different sectors, all the grains, all the common pulses, oil crops, including palm oil, actually, nuts, coffee, cocoa, all the common crops. And many of our clients, they do fresh vegetables, fresh fruits for export. This is a picture of the company that I mentioned. So this chili crop was introduced at the coast of Kenya, a variety that was not grown there, so farmers were not familiar with it. Of course, farmers will always be very conscious that when you bring a new crop, it's very risky for them. You might not have the market that you say you have. You might the crop might be more difficult to grow than you tell them. And so we really had to design a platform that could train the farmers, sign contracts to give market certainty, but also to link farmers to the banks. And so those are basically the three pillars that the software is very strong at. So that was in 2004. If we now look at many cooperatives in all the countries that we work in, or small traders, many of them still use, 20 years later, they still use paper-based systems. Everybody talks about the digital revolution, but the reality is that many still either use paper-based systems or very simple rudimentary systems like an Excel sheet, or they might have a data survey tool like ODK, Open Data Kit. They might even do mobile payment, but they would do it just on the phone as you would do it in the shop, in the local Duka. But these systems are not integrated. And that makes it very difficult for you when you want to scale. Yeah, so look into, when you select a system, look into the integration of these different functionalities that you need. So when you start using a system, you need to really understand how, of course, first of all, how you organize your own work working with small-scale farmers. Yeah, so for example, at what levels are you buying from the farmers? Are you buying directly from farmers? Are you buying through the groups? Are the farmers actually organized under cooperatives, or even cooperatives could be organized under farmer unions or federations? How does that structure look like? Do the farmers have multiple fields, multiple crops? Each crop has their own contract. Many aspects that you need to understand. We often see that when we work with a new client, we basically help the clients to map how they work, because often, of course, as an entrepreneur, all this is in your head. You know how you work, but explaining that to somebody who's going to configure your digital tools can be quite a challenge. Something simple like your organogram. How is your organization set up? Who is reporting to who? This sounds very straightforward, but it's actually one of the big challenges that we see as an IT company. We are introducing an ERP, Enterprise Resource Planning tool, let's say a management platform, where all these aspects need to be set up in the system. So for example, who is reporting to who? Who should have access to the mobile app? Who should have access to, who only should have viewer rights? Who should have data entry rights? Who should have rights to change the prices, delete farmers, things like that. And so all this needs to be set up, and it's quite an exercise. So I mentioned already, you can have very complex situations on the ground. Sometimes you might even have your own farm that can actually also be managed by ePlot. You might have individual farmers, groups of farmers, farmer cooperatives. Now, each farmer wants to be paid, of course, for the product that they deliver. but there could be group bonuses, all kinds of incentives, group bonus, all kinds of payment incentives basically related to distances, quality, group functionality, volumes. And so all this needs to be set up in ePlot or the system that you choose. Now, how can digital tools help you with, for example, the market access through the quality and the traceability that you need? So ideally, you would start with your planting material. You might have, let's say you are an avocado exporter, you might have your nursery, or you work with a supplier of planting material. You want to be able to trace back all those batches from the nursery because there might be an issue with the grafting, there might be an issue with the variety or whatever diseases. So the traceability really starts with the planting material, whether you use seed or cuttings or bulbs. It doesn't matter, but you have basically planting material. So when you register a field, you want to make sure that you can link that planting material to the field. When you register the field, you want to, of course, take the GPS location or take a polygon. So ePlot, for example, can take the polygon, you walk around the field, it will give you the exact shape of the field, and it will calculate also the center of the field. So when you register the crop, you have a planting date, you have a crop cycle in the system, different stages. For example, in the simplest case, it would be vegetative, generative, uprooted. But of course, in some crops, you can really have several crop stages. Ideally, you would also link the crop stage to, for example, specific messages that you would send to farmers. So then during the season, you can do customized messages. I will tell you a little bit more about that in the presentation later. So when you collect a product, you need to be sure that you can actually link that batch, let's say a bag or a crate of product, link it to the field, but also have the unique number of that bag or crate captured, whether this is a barcode or a unique number that you can type in. All that is possible. Then, of course, when you have collected product, you might have a warehouse in the field or a pack house in the big city, in the capital city next to the airport. You need to make sure that your product remains traceable. You could have value addition steps, like, for example, grading, sorting, packaging. Sorry, somebody's trying to get in. You could have a number of value addition steps that you can, you would basically need to record as well. So I'll show you how that works. So in the case of ePlot, when you collect a product, you can link, you can collect the kilos, you can link that now to the field, but also to the traceability number of the bag. The field actually, that's also very convenient. Sometimes the system will generate a field code, but sometimes you prefer to use a block number, or maybe your plots even have names. So in ePlot, for example, you can also type that in. So really, you should understand how do you want to work, because you need to select the digital tools that meet your requirements. Of course, you can also do some customizations, but they will end up quite expensive usually. So when you do a payment, of course, farmers want to be paid. In the case of ePlot, you can actually pay at group level as well. So still, it would produce overviews at the individual farmer level for payment, but you could pay through the group account, and then the group could be responsible to distribute the product. So cash payment is possible. In the case of ePlot, you can actually hand over cash to your staff. The system has a wallet. You can now see exactly how much cash has been paid. You can also see then how much money the staff member has bought. So this can also be very useful if you work with brokers, middlemen, shopkeepers that buy on behalf of you. You can always see how much cash have they got remaining. when do you need to send them more cash? In general, brokers also need to be advanced because they don't have the thousands of dollars that they need to buy for you. So that is a strong feature in this case in ePlot. Now, if you pay through the bank or mobile payment, that is also very important. Not still many countries have, Kenya of course is very advanced in mobile payment, but most other countries are less advanced, even though mobile payment is available in almost every country now. But it doesn't mean that it's very common. Also doesn't mean that all these mobile networks, mobile payment providers have, for example, a big agency network and things like that. So in the case of ePlot, we can integrate with any bank. You can actually do through API or also through just basically payment instructions. The bank might have a certain format in which they need to receive the information, whether it is an Excel sheet or CSV data sheet or printed form. You can rubber stamp it, print it. But if you use an API, the advantage is that you can actually see the balances, in this case in ePlot, but also the payment confirmations. So if you pay thousands of farmers, and you need to be able to easily see who has received the money and where there was an issue, maybe the account was not correct or whatever happened. Yeah. And then of course in ePlot you can then also then see if you have enough money in the bank account before you make the transaction, whether you do a mobile payment or a cash payment, bank payment. We actually work with quite a few gateway providers, so that is very convenient. So you can have one mobile payment provider for different networks. You can actually in ePlot also have multiple farmers with multiple banks, or some farmers want to be paid through the bank, others cash, others mobile payment. All that is possible as well. Now, one of the big challenges with access to finance is that farmers often cannot lend money from the banks or from other SACCOs, for example, because there's simply not enough data for the financiers to assess their risks. Yeah, so the KYC that needs to be in place is often not there, or it's very expensive for the bank to collect all that information. In the case of ePlot, we can exchange from the hundreds of variables in ePlot, we can exchange that directly with the bank, or in many cases, actually banks, they use specialized companies that do credit scoring algorithms. So we can exchange it with them or directly with the bank. And then the kind of information that I talk about, for example, is whatever the bank needs, could be the biodata like age, gender. The bank might want to lend money to people that are not too young, not too old. Maybe they have a preference for women, but there might also be other information like, has the farmer followed the training course on financial literacy, or is there a history of default? What is the productivity? Is the farmer above with the 20% best farmers in the group? Or what was the production of the last season or the last 30 days of milk delivery or whatever? How much money is already outstanding? So ePlot can share all that information live with the bank or with the SACCO. And this is extremely cost effective. And we do work actually a lot with banks, but also with organizations like MasterCard. We're working on all kinds of, I'll give you some examples here. This is MasterCard, for example. These cards are blank because we built them. This is a kind of card which is actually produced directly. I'm showing it on the camera. These are ID cards generated by the system, by ePlot. You can print them directly at your office in case you have a special label printer. Based on the QR code, integrated with, for example, biometric verification, the system can, for example, confirm who is the farmer. Just things, or like you have chips or you have magnetic strips. All these things are possible, that you can basically use that to basically build in additional steps for the bank to make sure that they can have full confidence in the data they get from you, through eProd, but it would be directly from the partnership that you have with the bank. So in case you are directly advancing farmers, that is of course a different story. And so basically there are two types of loans. Loans that would come from the bank or a SACCO. These loans usually go directly to the farmers, but because you as a buyer can give guarantees that you would pay the farmers through the bank has a chance to deduct. So you don't have to be a guarantor, but the bank usually accepts that relationship you have with the farmers, and then they can make the deductions that they need. So that would be easy, usually be through a tripartite agreement. Now, in case you directly give loans to the farmers, this could be seed advances or tractor hours for land preparations, things like that. You can also put these services in eProd and schedule these loans. So you could say, for example, through checkoff, when farmers deliver product, you can make the deductions. You can put different conditions for every loan. Could be a fixed amount per month, a fixed amount per delivery of the farmer, a percentage of the delivery. You could give them a grace period. You can schedule different loans, one after the other, different priorities. And then all the reports that you need at farmer level, group level, you can basically schedule that automatically. So yeah, loan management is an important aspect. And of course, all the reports that you need are there in the system. Now, how do you manage field activities? In the case of eProd, there is a mobile application and there's a desktop application. The desktop application, of course, is easier to work with. You have, I'll show you directly. There's a lot of functionality there. There's a mobile app which is adjusted for field staff. So the key functionalities are there to look up information, to directly respond to farmers' questions or questions at group level. The mobile app can be used to do surveys like scouting pests and diseases, baseline surveys at group level, for example, or at farmer level, evaluations, credit scoring data. Surveys can be there. They can actually be scheduled from the office. So they will appear on the mobile phone of the staff when the supervisor has assigned them. Everything on the mobile app can work offline. So when you don't have internet, you can still do your surveys. It will pick automatically timestamp, location stamp. So you can always see where and when it was done. Then, of course, one of the key functionalities is the collection. So when you collect product, you can actually register farmers, register the fields, do field inspections and all that. But then when you are ready, you can actually do yield projections with the mobile app. So if you do the surveys, if you do a collection, you can link that collection to the field, to the bag or container. I mentioned that already. And then further, if you manage training programs, you can also record that. That is quite there's more functionality there. When you communicate with the farmers, you can use eProd, for example, to send SMS. You can send weather forecasts to farmers, localized according to the locations of the farms. You can also share agronomic advice. So, for example, there are many organizations or private companies that have agronomic models, when to spray against Phytophthora or blight, early blight, late blight, what fertilizer to use, what is the yield forecast. So all that can be done basically with models based on the location and data from different sources like the weather, things like that. So eProd basically would push information from those different models. So if you have a specific challenge or you have a specific provider for the weather forecast or for yield forecasting or for agronomic advice, we can integrate that with eProd, and then basically you can push those advisory services to the farmers. In this case by SMS, but we could also do the same through WhatsApp or IVR, which are recorded messages, different options. I mentioned already training programs. So ePlot can also share content different ways, but most of all, if you have a large training program, let's say you have a few hundred groups of farmers, you have a couple of training topics per group per year, you can easily have like 1,000 or more group training sessions in a year. And so simply recording the attendance for the farmers or scheduling those sessions. Imagine those are often trainings just underneath a tree, nothing fancy. So organizing that, the attendance, maybe farmers don't show up directly, but they send somebody else. So you need to record those details as well. Then you need to report. So you need to share this information with a donor that might be funding your training program, or to the board of your company who has been trained. So that is quite a big job. So ePlot has a special module for that. I mentioned already communication. So you see actually in the mobile app on the screen, above would be a weather forecast that is automated, and below could be just a localized message, for example. And the advantage of SMS, of course, is everybody can receive it, even if you don't have a smartphone. Now, one of the features in ePlot in this case is that you manage also stocks. It's very important that you manage the stocks, link that also to traceability. And even to forecasted yields, because then you can really manage, monitor basically how is your farm or how is your program with outgrowers performing. So yeah, let's not go into too much detail, but basically it's important that you know exactly in the field, in the warehouse, but also what you have sent to clients. I'll give you a quick example. We also work in Afghanistan. There we work with the saffron sector. They are trying to brand saffron as product from Afghanistan. Many countries are buying saffron from Afghanistan, like Spain, for example, but they're selling it as product from origin of Spain. So by the full traceability that ePlot can offer, and also the integration with the traceability, but also the stock management, we will, I'll show you an example. ePlot will generate QR codes and labels through label printers that you can put either on the boxes, depending on the stage, the box or the bags or the final bottles with saffron. So when the consumer scans it, in this case, the consumers, they will see then who is the farmer, what is the region, and things like that. So that integration of traceability and stock management is quite complex, and but it's a very important feature. Now we talked already. We have a lot of data in the system. You can use it, of course, to manage the production, link farmers to financial institutions, or report, for example, to NGOs or government that you work with. So just a quick summary. ePlot has a mobile application and a desktop application, but there will always be some applications only have a mobile app, for example, but this is basically the core for the digital tools. You need to look into the integration of hardware. So do you have Bluetooth scales, Bluetooth printers, sensors, scanners for barcodes, QR codes? So that is very important. So in ePlot, you can integrate all these different devices. Then what is also important, some packages, they would offer you hardware from a very specific supplier. That can really get you into trouble if that supplier goes bankrupt, or it might become expensive. And so in our case, we try to be independent. We don't do hardware, for example. But if you, we will just make sure that if you have a Bluetooth printer, ePlot can communicate with it. And so look and consider that when you are selecting a system. Now, it's also, of course, you also have other packages in your software. You will never find one package that does everything, like farmer registration, surveys, payment, even to your bookkeeping. So in this case, it might be important that you look into interoperability. How does the platform that you will select integrate with some of your existing platforms? So you might have a financial accounting platform, QuickBooks, Tally, Sage. You might be a big company, you might have SAP, Oracle. Now, so it's very important that you look into, is this compatible? Can these systems communicate to each other? So we have quite a bit of experience integrating, for example, with financial accounting software. And then I mentioned the services. So weather forecast, agronomic advice, there are many providers. We don't offer that directly, but we have many partners, even other companies that we might not even have heard of, but you work with them, we can integrate with them. And then you can push their information or use it for mapping. So in the case of ePlot, there are so many modules and so much functionality that we can really help you set this up to manage your specific needs. So if you look at something simple like improving your yields, or the farmer's yields. So this sounds very simple, but it's of course very complex. You might need improved varieties. You might need to do trials for that, demonstrations, farmer field days, training, sign contracts with the farmers for that variety, do a payment. Then you need to report to researchers or to a donor that is helping you to set this up. So there are many, many aspects. So you need a system that is very flexible, that can help you manage all these different modules in the way that you need them for your services and for your purpose. Okay, so in the case you are a big buyer, let's say you are an exporter of avocados, but you work with many cooperatives. So each cooperative in this case could use ePlot, but we can make sure that data can come together in what's called a data warehouse, where some of the data is then accessible for you. We need to take into account data privacy, but we can set it up if the cooperatives or the traders agree that, for example, yield forecasting data or surface or gender, whatever you need to report either to NGOs or maybe to the banks in case you have pre-financing for your suppliers, whether other maybe marketing platforms, we can integrate with all that. But yeah, it's one of the things you need to consider. When you select digital tools, look at some platforms that have really proven that they can do this, because again, this is not so easy. And then, of course, if you have this, then of course the banks, you can do all kinds of integrations. Now, of course, with that, you can have then your dashboards for reporting, your BI tools for reporting to the board, for yourself, to the teams. We can create platforms, business intelligence platforms, where you can really play around with it, organize the data the way you want it, without being able to modify anything. So you don't bring the database at risk. We can configure it like that. We can also restrict that some people have access to certain things and other people don't have the same authorities. Good. So just maybe to finalize, so yeah, we think ePlot systems like this should be affordable. So for larger organizations, we roughly aim at $50 or 50, let's say 50 Kenyan shillings or $50 per farmer per year. Yeah, so that is, we think, is a realistic price point. We see with a couple of systems that they really can cost 5 to 10 times as much per year per farmer. And we don't think that is really realistic. And we also see that from the clients we have, that often they have tried other platforms and it is simply too expensive. So I can share that later. I want to share also with you that we work with, well, we have many partners, but one of them is the African Milling School, together with Buller. Buller is an international company, one of the world leaders in food processing equipment. To give you an idea, in Kenya, 60% of the maize is milled with their equipment. The cocoa, globally, 80% of the cocoa volume passes through the equipment of Buller. And so they're really one of the biggest food processor manufacturer equipment companies in the world. So we work with them and we offer a free of charge training program. If you go to africagrainsonline.net, there is a training program. It is 16 weeks. 1 hour per week. And there are 8 modules on food processing. It's focusing on milling technologies, food processing technologies like maize, rice, oil crops, beans, yes, mainly the different aspects. But the second part are 8 modules about contract farming. So again, it's not about EPROT, but it's about contract farming, but it's done provided by EPROT. And basically in 8 modules with assignments and all that, basically you're preparing a business plan for contract farming. And so if you're thinking of expanding or you're thinking of setting up a contract farming scheme, do register. In 3 weeks we start. If you go to africagrainsonline.net, you will see that, how to access it. So thank you very much. Let me take quickly a few minutes to show you a little bit the system itself. So this is the desktop application. Then I'll show you the mobile app. So let's start with the mobile app. This is my phone. This has been designed. Let me just open it from here. So this has been designed for simple Android phones. It can even be Android 7, which came out I think 6 years ago. Yeah, so no problems there. So you see, this is configured for a certain company, just a dummy set. In this case, I put it up on my name. So you can have staff in it. You can have different stakeholders, like NGOs you might work with, or Ministry of Agriculture, that you can also give access to it. In this case, you see there is information at group level, farmer level, the surveys I mentioned, training, and the collection. So at group level, you see there are 2 groups in this system. If I go here to farmers, there's at this group, for example, I've got a lot of information about the group. So they might have a little office. If I look at the farmers, in this case, they have many farmers. You see here this QR code in the top right corner. So that is where your ID card comes in. But you can also just select, for example, in this case, Abel. Abel, again, is a farmer. With, let me just show you, there's a profile here. Of course, there's the name. The farmer has an ID number, member of a group, telephone number. This farmer has a location, could be location of the house, gender, preferred payment method, the bank account details. In this case, the farmer is in Kenya, so county, district, all that information is there. If I now go to this farmer, I see this farmer has 3 loans, all 3 for school fee advances. So, for example, in the coffee sector, you often see that farmers are paid at the end of the season, but then during the season they get advances. So that's why this example is there. But the extension officer can immediately answer in the field. How many loans are there? What are they for? How much has been repaid? If I go to fields, this farmer has 1 field. Field for rice. Again, you see here, you can take a location and a polygon. There is the planting material that is used in this case. So you can make reference to the seed batch, the origin of the seed, the crop status. There's a crop cycle. In this case, there is a number of days for that crop. This is not accurate. You can actually do scheduled follow-up visits for field inspection. Then let me just quickly show you. I don't want to. So in this case, you can do a collection, for example. So when you collect, I pick here one of the groups. I collect here. The groups has actually location of the collection center. The produce. So this will be produce that the group is contracted for. Let me take rice. Farmer, in this case, Abel. So this farmer might have a number of bags. Yeah, so I didn't bring my Bluetooth skill, but let's say 1 bag is 89 kilos. Okay, this is configured for a different setting where you can actually correct for tare weight, but you can also collect, basically you can collect the the bag number and the field number. Let me clean this. And then, of course, when the farmer has multiple bags, you pick them one by one. The surveys that can be scheduled, you see here, group at field farmer group level. You see there's actually outstanding surveys with the blue circles. Let me just very quickly show them. So in this case, there is outstanding surveys for this farmer Abel. Okay, will not take the location now, but so you see these surveys can be filled in. So any survey like multiple choice, open question, skip question, multiple options under multiple choice. Yeah, all that is possible, numeric answers. Okay, and then you synchronize when you have internet, and then maybe very quickly know the last part. So in eProd, you would have these different levels like fields, farmers, groups, maybe cooperatives, farmer unions. You don't have to use these higher levels, but basically a lot is designed around groups. So group contract, group collection, group training. So here you see farmers. This is a group called Mabarara. So of course, a lot of information here. There's a couple of farmers here. So if I look here for the individual farmer, actually I can look up the location here. I can look it up on a map. So you see there's a number of maps that you can select. You can pick them here from the list. Then we can also, of course, integrate with remote sensing data, stuff like that. Then at farmer level, you can manage contracts, you can manage training, assign training to a farmer. Fields, you see this farmer actually has one field. This is the information. If I want to do schedule as a supervisor a follow-up visit for this farmer, I just go here, put a date when I want this farmer to follow up. So the 30th of June, for example, I assign, let me say, Amos here to do to visit the field, look at potato crop, and then I can select a certain survey. In this case, I don't have surveys here scheduled, but I can assign surveys. If I want to do a weather forecast or agronomic advice, I need internet for that because this is information coming from partners. You see for the location of this farmer. So this farmer has a location at this here. So I can have here now a 7-day weather forecast. If I want to send this by SMS, let's say I want today and tomorrow, I sent a summary of the conditions, temperature, maybe they're drying in the evening, so I put dew point, wind speed, and then this message can be sent, and I say time to harvest. I can adjust the message, and I send this to the farmer or to a group or an entire cooperative, just like that. So maybe last point, because otherwise I take too much time. So there are many reports in eProd. You see all categories at farmer level, group level, survey reports, payment reports, loan reports, stock, training. So if we look, for example, at payment, you see here there's a long list of banks. This is just for Kenya and East Africa. Many banks that you can use to pay with. You probably know some of them: KCB, Equity Bank, INM, Mobile Payment, M-Pesa, Segovia. So these are all these banks are available for payment. Great. Let me stop here. Let me stop sharing my screen. Good. Let me stop my sharing.
So thank you so much, Jan. I think that was quite an insightful presentation. And just from the presentation, I can quickly maybe just summarize that through your years of experience, you've been able to, tap into the knowledge you've had and being able to customize the app that would work for farmers and groups, because you've mentioned that you're working with both individual farmers, individual farms and the cooperatives and the groups of farmers, which means that you've understood actually what they need, and even going way back to those older phones that could actually be able to get the lower type of internet to the farmers. Now, when we are looking at that, We have a couple of questions that have come through and also some that we'll ask. There's issues about, because you link, there's a connection between having the farmer groups on your system and the market. It's kind of like a value chain that you're looking at. How do you guarantee, how do you guarantee the prices? Or is it that they just use your system to, transact, but you're not the one in charge of the prices? That is one. And then there's an issue about, I know you've mentioned about data privacy, but it would be great to probably just let us know how your data is stored, where it's stored. Is it in countries? Is it within countries that have, like agreements with Kenya for data safety and protection? So maybe I can start with those as we ask the others. Thank you.
Yeah. Okay. So eProd is a management system for the buyers, and basically they are the market. So if you are, let's say, an exporter of avocados, you could use eProd to manage your hundreds or thousands of farmers. So you would be the one offering the market. You would be the one putting the prices, changing the prices, putting the quality parameters, or all kinds of incentives that you want to manage through eProd. We do actually have clients that offer basically use eProd for sourcing, and then they have other platforms to offer that to the market. Let's say like Twiga is a known example. But for example, one of our clients is FarmWorks. So they have tools for the marketing side. So we actually have looked into that. It's not a big step for us to add a marketing platform, because then you could basically have eProd for sourcing. Then if you have stocks of different products, this can be automatically uploaded on the website, and then companies could place orders on the website. And so in that case, we could offer a fully integrated sourcing and also marketing platform. So at the moment, we focus more on the sourcing side. So on data privacy, yes, data privacy is, of course, a big topic. It's very important because this is personal data from farmers. It's also simply by law. There is Data Privacy Act, like in Kenya, but in most African countries have now something in place. Often it is based on the Data Privacy Acts of the European Union, which is an advantage because we, in our case, we have more experience in the European Union, and our servers, for example, are in like Germany with the highest data privacy standards. So at the moment we are hosting there, also because of speed and because of reliability. But where required, and where it's possible, we will host in the country itself. So on the data privacy side, one of the important things is that you can make it credible to the government, for example, as a buyer, that the farmers understand to what they have given consent. So when you register a farmer, do they understand what you are recording and how you want to use the data? And maybe they agree that you take the data so you can basically do a field visit and buy from them, but it doesn't mean that you can sell the data to a bank. So in eProd, we are making adjustments. Some of it is ready, but we're making more and more adjustments. We work also with GSMA, we work with MasterCard, we work with Rabobank, just really get that data privacy part ready. We work with GIZ, Diasca, for example, because data privacy is really a big topic. It's a relatively new topic. It's also a bit of a challenge for us. So we need to make many system adjustments, but we are fully working on that.
Okay, maybe as you mentioned, you can also mention the countries that you're working with within East Africa, because I can see one person from Tanzania who's asking if you're in Tanzania. I think the one for coffee value chains, obviously you're in the coffee value chains. I've seen you give a lot of examples on coffee. And then in terms of the digital wallets that you have, how does it work, and what is the time period that it takes to actually, for farmers to receive their payment? Especially when it comes to payment, maybe the farmer doesn't have a loan, they require their payment. How does it work? Is there someone in between, like having an escrow account that actually, provides security for either the buyer or the seller or whoever who's on the platform to actually know that there's money for them even after they transact? Maybe you can respond to those.
Yeah. So we basically, let's say we just finished an integration with Nigeria for FreeBank. So it would be the client using eProd who would have a bank account with, in this case, with FreeBank. Yeah, but we have the same, for example, with Equity Bank, with M-Pesa. So it is not us. It's not eProd. Well, eProd will manage it, but it's not us who need an escrow account. It would be the buyer, the user of eProd, who basically needs to contact the bank, register with the bank, and then they can use eProd to process the payments.
Probably the list of countries within East Africa that you're working in?
Yeah, so in East Africa, let me very quickly share again my screen. So in East Africa, we are basically in the top, basically from Ethiopia to Mozambique. Where is it? So yeah. So you can see it here. We are so we are basically Ethiopia, Kenya, Tanzania, Rwanda, Tanzania, Zambia, Malawi, Zimbabwe, Mozambique. Not all the countries are on the map. So we do basically the whole eastern coast, and then of course we have West Africa, where we have also actually quite a few countries. So we are active in Tanzania. We actually have a separate company for Tanzania.
So maybe as we come to the end, throughout your journey, I don't know what kind of challenges you've experienced, because you've been talking about, just adjusting the business as you progress. What are some of the major challenges that you've actually come across, and especially sharing as an entrepreneur in the digital agricultural space, and to those maybe young people who would want to get into this space, just along the journey, what are those challenges? You're working with some of the smallholder farmers, if you're talking about coffee. How has it been in terms of adoption, especially if they're in groups or maybe as individual farmers? So back to you.
Yeah, so one of the big challenges is basically the digital literacy. So many organizations, they are very scared to use digital tools. They are familiar with paper or simple systems like an Excel sheet, which are very difficult for scaling. So they understand they need digital tools, but at the same time, they fear that they become dependent on them and might even affect the whole company in case they can't get it to function. So we noticed that our clients need a lot of handholding. So what often happens with companies that offer this kind of services, to save cost, they deploy it, and then basically, they move on to the next client. But for the clients, this is like a journey. They start. It's also important when you have a system that basically it is modular, that you don't need to use everything at once. If you, for example, say, okay, let me start registering farmers and fields, and then I start buying, and then at a later stage, I might use the system for scouting pests and diseases, or I use it for bank payment, and I continue with cash payment. So you need to build it step by step, because if you go too fast, for many companies, it is simply too much. They need more time. So it's a real challenge that on one hand, it needs to be affordable, and on the other hand, because otherwise companies cannot afford it. But on the other hand, you need to spend a lot of time with the clients. So you need to find a model where you can really offer that support, but very cost effectively. And to be honest, we work with a lot of young university graduates. They're happy to travel by bus. They go to the client, spend the night there. That's for us. That is the way to keep the cost down. Because if we send people in private car, for example, it would just become far too expensive. So the cost, maintaining the cost as low as possible is a real big challenge.
Thank you. And maybe one final question that has just come through is about the integration. You mentioned that you're working with different service providers when it comes to weather, when it comes to other services that you're not providing. Do they integrate your services into their systems, or do you integrate their services into your system? Because then there's that flow of data. How does that all work? And how do you ensure that you're giving the farmers up-to-date data and from credible third-party service providers?
Yeah. So basically, the integration is based on interoperability. So the data can flow from ePlot to another platform. For example, when you have an accounting system, you need to have your stocks, your farmer payments updated in your QuickBooks or Tally. So that could be one direction. But for example, if you have information for weather forecast, that is basically imported and then shared through ePlot. So both are possible. It could also be even both ways simultaneously. Like we work with some providers of blockchain applications that really monitor global solutions, global supply chains, for example. So then, the information would flow both ways. So that interoperability is really critical, and therefore you need to kind of standardize the information. You need to agree with others what standards you use, so it is all compatible. The quality of the data, of course, always depends on the quality that at the end the field extension officers are putting in. It's very important to design the system in a way that you don't create extra work. Basically the steps that you would do on paper, like register farmer, weigh the kilos, next crate, you weigh the kilos, you write down traceability, all these steps that you would have to do anyway, you just make it easier in the digital tool. You don't create additional steps, because that is where then people feel the staff would start basically putting in either rubbish data, making it up, whatever, just to save time. So you need to make sure that the system is very efficient and is really making the work for the field staff easier. That is the best way to get quality data.
Thank you so much, Jan. It's now 8:08 p.m. East African time, and we started at 7:05. We are 3 minutes ahead in terms of utilization of our time. So I would like to really thank you for the presentation. And for those who would like to get in touch with Jan or eProd, we'll put up the presentation, the recording on our website, so you'll be able to actually reach out. And also on the YouTube pages, you'll be able to find the full recording, so you can always follow up. You can also get in touch with the SOCA office at info@soca.or.ke just to get contacts for Jan and get more information from him about the eProd system. I believe that when you are talking about traceability, this is a critical software, and I'm sure there are also other service providers in the market who can be able to offer this. So we'll be able to work with you and our professional team to ensure that you're also forming that traceability within your systems and within the smallholder farmers. So thank you very much, Jan, and the attendees who are able to participate in today's session. And we'll again meet again next week, same time, with another session. We are still looking at the value chain, so it's very critical. We are facing a very we are facing very interesting times. We have crops in the field, the rains are uncertain. So we'll be discussing ways in which we can be able to mitigate some of these challenges that come across, especially with climate change. So we look forward to next week's discussion. Thank you very much. Have a good morning, good evening, and good night. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Bye-bye.